In China, they call it Tofu-Dreg construction. But after 2025, the name feels like an understatement. When a brand new bridge collapses in months, when apartment walls are filled with garbage, and the nation's tallest tower reigns on the inside, you learn a terrifying truth: the tofu is built better than the infrastructure. At 10 minutes past 4 in the afternoon on November 11, 2025, the Hongqi Super Bridge in Sichuan-Qinghai Prefecture, a 758-meter-long structure nicknamed the Bridge in the Clouds, was erased from the landscape. Its main span, completed just 291 days earlier on January 14th, plunged into the Zumuzu River. The official narrative, disseminated within hours, was clean and simple: a slope landslide. An act of nature. But the public record tells a different story. One that begins not at 4:10 p.m. on November 11th, but 25 hours earlier. At 3 p.m. on November 10th, the Malkang City Transportation and Public Security Bureaus confirmed they had detected deformation on the mountain slope looming over the bridge's right bank. This was not a prediction, it was a direct observation. The mountain was actively failing. Their documented response was to implement temporary traffic control measures. And that warning on November 10th was itself an echo of a much earlier one, buried in official documents. A 2024 Geological Disaster Risk Assessment report, issued by Sichuan's own provincial monitoring station, had already designated the entire Dadu River basin as a high-incidence area for such events, citing frequent plate movements and fragmented rock masses. This was not a sudden tragedy, it was a failure in two acts. First, a failure of planning. Building a monument in a known danger zone, a fact established in their own reports a year prior. Second, a failure of response, observing a clear and present danger in real time, and choosing only to reroute traffic. It was the final predictable outcome of a chain of human decisions. And while the Hongqi collapse was a story of warnings ignored, another facet of this systemic rot had already been writ in blood. Just 81 days earlier, and 800 kilometers to the north, at 3 a.m. on August 22nd, on the border of Jianzha and Hualong counties in Qinghai, the quiet of the pre-dawn hours was shattered. On the Jianzha Yellow River Super Bridge, a centerpiece of the new Sichuan-Qinghai Railway, crews from the state-owned China Railway Major Bridge Engineering Group were performing a critical steel strand tensioning operation. Suddenly, a thunderous noise, which witnesses would later describe as like an earthquake, ripped through the site. A crucial wire rope had snapped. The failure sent a 108-meter section of the main steel arch plunging nearly 40 stories into the raging Yellow River below. Of the 16 workers on the structure, 15 construction workers and one project leader, the outcome was catastrophic. 12 were confirmed dead. 4 were missing, swept away by the river. They were men between 30 and 50 years old, mostly from Henan, Hubei, Hunan, and Guizhou, working overnight to adjust the bridge's slings for its final closure. The reason for the deadly overnight rush: the project was being pushed to meet an end-of-August completion deadline. Online, citizens accused leaders of an obsession with grand achievements at the expense of human life. But the most chilling detail came 2 days later, in an official statement from the contractor's parent company, the China Railway Group. After offering condolences, the statement concluded with a line that sparked a firestorm of outrage. This accident will not have a significant impact on the company's overall production, operations, and performance. The backlash was immediate. Netizens slammed the response as cold-blooded, ruthless, and devoid of genuine human care. 2 monumental projects, 2 catastrophic failures. One linked to ignoring documented geological warnings. The other, a deadly rush for China's speed, culminating in a corporate response that valued performance over human life. While the giants of steel and concrete were falling in remote mountains, a different kind of crisis was unfolding, not in a matter of seconds, but in a slow, terrifying creep. The rot was reaching people's homes. The 1st of November, 2025. In Danyang City, Jiangsu Province, at approximately 11 p.m., residents of Building 38 in the Taiyang residential area felt their world begin to shift. The building was suffering from what officials would later call uneven settlement. For the families inside, it meant cracking walls and a foundation that was visibly sinking. An emergency evacuation was ordered. The next day, the Danyang Housing and Urban Rural Development Bureau issued a formal notice. But for the displaced, official statements meant little. Netizens, identifying themselves as residents, posted desperate messages online. One reading, "Building 38 has started to be demolished, but the other evacuated residents have not been properly resettled yet. No one has contacted us. A lot of information has not been made public." Within a week, the building was officially designated a D-level dangerous structure, a formal admission of its critical state. By November 8th, it was gone, reduced to a pile of rubble, leaving its former inhabitants in limbo. Just 4 days after the Danyang building began to sink, on November 5th, another failure struck. This time in Jianzha City, Hebei Province. The underground garage of the Rongshangcheng residential complex suffered a large-scale collapse. On-site footage showed a scene of devastation. Concrete floors buckled into irregular waves, load-bearing columns fractured and broken, and walls severely collapsed. A space designed for cars had become a structural death trap. The failures were a constant, unnerving drumbeat of decay and disregard across the country. On November 3rd, in Jingdong, Yunnan, a section of the Nanjing Expressway began to crack and sink. The official operator, the Yunnan Communications Investment Group, blamed continuous heavy rainfall, an echo of the landslide excuse used for the Hongqi Bridge. On November 8th, in Liaoyang, Liaonan, residents of the Guanlan Jingjing complex took matters into their own hands. They hung banners from their balconies with a desperate plea, "Help! Unscrupulous businesses are endangering the lives of the people." They alleged an illegal renovation in a commercial unit had removed a floor slab, severely damaging the building's load-bearing frame. Their attempts to raise the alarm by posting videos on Douyin, they claimed, were futile. The videos were taken down in less than a day. And on November 2nd, in Jiang City, Guangdong, the issue wasn't a collapse, but a confrontation that revealed the deep chasm between officials and the public they are meant to serve. In Sanshui village, local cadres and town government officials began forcibly constructing a photovoltaic project directly on the basketball court of the Sanshui school. Villagers reported that an overwhelming 98% of them explicitly opposed the project, citing safety hazards and the loss of public educational space. When they tried to intervene, a person in charge reportedly dismissed them, saying, "You have no right to stop it. Let the representative come and talk to me." The incident was a stark example of official will overriding public safety concerns, a warning sign being actively ignored. While some failures are measured in lives lost, others reveal a level of brazen negligence so profound it borders on the absurd. They expose a system where the very appearance of infrastructure is a facade. The evidence can be found in a viral video from July 6, 2020. The location: a bridge in Zhongyi Township, part of Chongqing's Shiziu County. In the middle of a heavy downpour, a local man stands on the bridge and performs an impromptu quality inspection. He reaches out to a decorative stone guardrail pillar, grips it with his thumb and forefinger, and with almost no effort, crushes it into a pile of sand and gravel. The video exploded online. Netizens gave the structure a fitting, darkly comedic name, the Hand-Torn Bridge. An investigation into the bridge's contractor, the Hunan Overseas Construction Group, revealed a history that was anything but surprising. The company had been administratively punished at least 5 times for cutting corners, and had over 845 documented risk entries associated with its operations. The question wasn't how such a flimsy structure could have been built, but how a company with such a record was awarded a public works contract in the first place. It suggests a bidding and oversight process so compromised that the project's integrity was a foregone conclusion. The dealings behind the contract, it seems, were as deep and murky as the river the bridge was meant to cross. And if a rural bridge that crumbles by hand reveals the rot at the local level, another incident proves that this decay reaches the very pinnacle of China's national pride. The date was July 6, 2020. The location: the Shanghai Tower, the 632-meter skyscraper that stands as the tallest building in China. It was only 4 years old, as a torrential rainstorm and typhoon-level winds battered the city, turning shopping malls into waterfalls. The nation's gleaming symbol of economic might began to fail spectacularly. But the official story was even more bizarre. Management claimed the deluge inside the tower had nothing to do with the deluge outside, blaming instead a sudden equipment failure. Videos shot by office workers told a different story. A story of a building coming apart at the seams. Netizens described a cascade of water leaking from the 60th floor all the way down to the 9th, turning offices into what they called water curtain caves. Panicked employees scrambled to move computers and documents, using office trash cans and buckets to catch the deluge. It was a national embarrassment that sparked a firestorm of public ridicule. The country's most expensive and prestigious new landmark, a 14.8 billion yuan project, personally approved by Xi Jinping and demanded to be a first-class boutique project, had become the tallest leak. The official excuse was mocked relentlessly online. One netizen wrote, "I thought it was a rumor spread by foreign media. How could a landmark like the Shanghai Tower leak? I can't believe it's actually true. In the awesome country, nothing is impossible." Others commented, "The leak in the Shanghai Tower has nothing to do with the heavy rain. The heavy rain says it's innocent. It was caused by an internal water tank bursting. As an employee of a company below the 50th floor, I can say we got a day off today. The time to test the building's quality has arrived." Another was more blunt. "Amazing, a Tofu-Dreg project with Chinese characteristics." The failure of the Shanghai Tower was a stunning confirmation of a deeper rot. If the most visible, celebrated, and politically significant project in the nation couldn't even keep its own water in, it posed a terrifying question. What hidden flaws exist in the thousands of less prestigious projects, far from the world's gaze? For decades, the consequences of Tofu-Dreg construction were a domestic tragedy, contained within China's borders. But now, through the trillion-dollar ambition of the Belt and Road Initiative, the system of neglect has become a global export. The same pattern of poor management, questionable quality, and disregard for human life is being unleashed on a global scale. The evidence begins in East Africa. The date was June 26, 2017. In western Kenya, the Hongqi Bridge, a $1.2 billion project constructed by the state-owned China Overseas Engineering Group, was nearing completion. The bridge was a major political promise for then-President Uhuru Kenyatta, who had personally inspected the site just 2 weeks earlier as part of his re-election campaign. But 1 month before it was scheduled to open, the bridge's central span suddenly crumbled into the Nozia River, injuring at least 27 workers. For the Kenyan government, it was a profound political embarrassment. For the world, it was a clear warning sign. That warning went unheeded. On December 24, 2023, on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, a furnace at a nickel processing plant owned by PT Indonesia Tsingshan Stainless Steel, a subsidiary of the Chinese giant Tsingshan Holding Group, exploded during maintenance. The blast ripped through the facility, killing 21 workers. 8 of them were from China, the rest were Indonesian. The preliminary investigation pointed to a catastrophic failure of safety protocols. Flammable liquid had not been cleared from the furnace before repairs began. Indonesian police eventually named 2 Chinese nationals, the furnace supervisor and his deputy, as criminal suspects. A netizen working in the industry there offered a chilling summary. "This isn't the first time it has exploded. They don't value life. What they value is production." And the pattern continues, reaching into the heart of Europe. On November 1, 2024, in Novi Sad, Serbia's second-largest city, a massive concrete canopy over the entrance to the main train station collapsed. It crushed the people below, killing at least 14. The station was not an old, crumbling relic. It had just completed a 3-year, multi-million-dollar renovation, finished only 4 months earlier in July. The contractors responsible for the work, as confirmed by Serbia's own construction minister, were 2 of China's largest state-owned firms, China Railway International and the China Communications Construction Company. A bridge in Kenya that couldn't stand up long enough to be finished. A factory in Indonesia where safety was sacrificed for production. A newly renovated station in Serbia that became a 2. From Africa to Asia to Europe, the story is the same. The Belt and Road Initiative is not just exporting concrete and steel. It is exporting the very system that has made Tofu-Dreg a household name in China. These are not accidents. They are the predictable, inevitable outcomes of a system where the decay is built in from the very foundation. The mechanics of this rot were laid bare by insiders like Zhenglin, an excavator operator who witnessed the fraud firsthand on a highway tunnel project in Yunnan. He described a process where construction was a carefully choreographed lie, where out of 12 required steel arch frames, only 2 were installed to pass a superficial inspection, where entire sections of rebar mesh were omitted, and where concrete was poured less than a third of its required thickness over a base of dirt and waste. He recounted how, twice a month, he was ordered to load trucks with tons of new steel, stolen directly from the project site, to be sold on the black market. His attempts to report this were met with silence from authorities and persecution from the local interest groups he had exposed. This rot is nothing new. In 1998, after a catastrophic dike failure on the Yangtze River during a massive flood, then Premier Zhu flew into a rage. Standing on the ruins of the dike, he famously cursed what he saw, shouting, "Who knew the inside of the dike was all Tofu-Dreg? Human lives are at stake, and you turn it into a Tofu-Dreg, a bastard project. How can corruption reach this level?" He cursed the officials responsible. He demanded accountability. That was over a quarter of a century ago, and yet the bastard projects have only multiplied, from rural bridges to the nation's tallest skyscrapers, from domestic highways to international mega-projects. Because the Tofu-Dreg is not a flaw in the system, it is the system. A system where profits are privatized through stolen materials and cut corners, while the risk is socialized onto the public, who must live in, on, and under these structures. It is a system where accountability is a myth, and where the relentless pursuit of China's speed provides the perfect cover for the corruption that hollows out the core of the nation's infrastructure. The final, terrifying question is not if the next disaster will strike, but whose homes, whose highways, and whose children will be standing in its path when it does.